Hi guys and welcome to the latest TV review. Now what I have here today is the latest SMSL Sanskrit 10th. And when I say the latest, that means version 2. On the box they say V2, but most people actually call it MKII. Or on websites when you order one, it will usually be listed as MKII. And I already reviewed the original Sanskrit 10th. It was actually one of the first videos on this channel, but this one is very different. Don't just think it's some small difference, because it's not. The first big one is they actually changed to using AKM DAC chip. And that's the same one used in Topping E30 that I really liked and that many other reviewers really liked and praised for its good sound. And when you actually look at the specs, everything is exactly the same. You can see here on the back there are 3 different inputs: coaxial one, optical one, and USB one. And as on the original Sanskrit, the USB input is micro USB one. I'm not a big fan of this. I much prefer the regular USB port like Topping E30 has. But yeah, what are you gonna do? The second input is auxiliary power input, and you probably know that already. When you actually add low noise power supply, the sound improves. That goes for every DAC out there on the market. I tried it with this one too, it works. Now in the box you get only one micro USB cable. It feels really thin and non-substantial. It feels like something that will quickly start to lose connection and cause trouble. So I suggest that you buy 2 good micro USB cables. Actually one if you don't have intention to use any additional power supply, but 2 if you want to use one for the signal and the one for the power, and save yourself some troubles down the road with bad USB cable and losing connection with your PC and things like that. Other than that, it's all familiar story back here, so nothing really to tell. In the front, it's the same story as with the original one. You can put it both horizontally and vertically. And you can see that actually display rotates, where there are actually 2 displays. The one used when you put it in this position and the one when you put it like this. And I think it's a really nice touch. And in the box there are also 4 small silicone or rubber feet that you can attach to the unit. They're not pre-attached because first you can choose which way do you actually want to keep it and then put the feet on. Now that said, oh yeah, one last thing, there is also a remote in the box, and again the story is the same as with Topping E30 here. You can control volume, which actually makes this a preamp, and you can switch between 6, if I'm correct, digital filters. Each of them makes a small difference. Some people hear it, some people don't. Try for yourself. That said, let's move to the most important thing, and that's the sound quality. So let me tell you, without any further delay, it sounds really great. Now I hooked it to my main room setup, started listening to the music, and I just started enjoying it immediately. There is bass line, it's well controlled, it goes deep, it's punchy. Mid-range is really full sounding. There's quite nice body to vocals. They're focused, they're centered really nicely. Layering is great. A soundstage has decent width. Not so much of a depth, just okay. Basically like any other DAC at this price point. And details, a great amount of details too. They're not too sharp, too analytical or annoying. They're just nicely blended with everything else. And I was really surprised by this, so I immediately went on and compared it with Topping E30 that I reviewed it earlier. I really liked it. I recommend it as a best budget DAC when somebody asked me about that. And you maybe might think that they sound exactly the same because of the same AKM chip and same specs, but they don't really. The difference is that E30 sounds a little bit more analytical, if I can say so. It leans a little bit more on transients and details, whereas Sanskrit 10th MKII leans a bit more on full bodiness and mid-range richness, if I can say so. In terms of fine detailing, they're quite similar. Sometimes E30 will dig a little bit more and maybe make a little bit crisper and cleaner edge, while this one will make a little bit fuller tone. Which one I actually preferred, for me it's really tough to say. I listened to several songs, and for example, if I were listening to some singers, like female vocals, jazz singers, things like that, I actually preferred MKII here. Because of that full bodiness I mentioned, vocal was a little bit more forward, a little bit more present and more believable to my ears, just fuller sounding. Same goes for some instruments, and in many of those cases I actually preferred this one. I was surprised it's like $20 cheaper than E30 even. But when I actually play some really busy track, something with more instruments, with very fast-paced rhythm, things like that, sometimes I actually preferred E30, because in these situations it manages to sound a little bit more clear. Sometimes it layers a little bit better. And I think that soundstage feels a little bit wider with E30. That said, I really think there is no wrong choice here. These are both so good for their price. If I was pressed to choose one, I would probably keep Sanskrit 10th MKII for myself. Why? Because I really like that slightly fuller mid-range. It gives just a little bit more soul to the vocals, and most of my favorite music includes some sort of powerful female or male vocal, and it just sounds a little bit nicer through this one. But that's really very subjective, because objectively, and depending on your choice of music genres and your personal taste, and in the end, the rest of your system, you might feel that this one is a little bit more transparent, maybe breathes a little bit more, it has like slightly more air up top. What can I say? It's a great time to be a budget DAC buyer. If you like slightly leaner, slightly more analytical sound, you already have your recommendation, E30, still a great product. I also really appreciate because it has a real big USB connection on the back here. But if you like slightly more musical, slightly more full-bodied presentation than this one. Now, it's not as full as, for example, a Modi Multibit that I'm using in my system, but it is definitely one of the juiciest sounding Delta Sigma DAC that I've heard. So for people who, for example, appreciated Kada's Stone Board sound signature, I think that the same kind of people would appreciate this one too. And for me personally, it's also interesting hearing this type of sound from an AKM-based DAC. But that's just it. You cannot judge the device by its spec and by its DAC chip. Because if you could do that, these two would sound exactly the same, but they don't really. Both are great choice, Both are great DACs, but they have slightly different sound signature. And yeah, one last thing before I finish. As I mentioned in the beginning, there is an auxiliary power input on the back here. You don't have to use it, DAC sounds just fine without it. But if you do, and if you add some low noise power supply, and the most affordable one that I know is iiWi iPower, I'll link it below the video, that's additional $50, but you get really a great sounding DAC. It's just well-rounded sound. There is body to it, there are details to it. You get 3 different inputs, you get remote control, you get to control volume, even choose your own digital filters if you want to do that. Yeah, the same that I said for E30, this is just even $20 cheaper, and even a little bit more to my personal taste. And except having these micro USB connections on the back, that I would really prefer them to be like nice big USB-B ports, I have nothing else to complain about here. It's one of the easiest recommendations ever. So if you liked this video, please click like and subscribe. Also share it with your friends, because all of this would really help the channel grow and bring even more interesting reviews like this one in the future. Thank you for watching and see you next time.